Joining us on the show as part of our episode 300 celebration, he's the voice of the Seattle Seahawks. He was drafted in the second round of the 1976 NFL draft at 59 overall, 58 spots ahead of another Seahawks legend, Steve Largent. Steve Raible joins us. Thanks for coming on the show.
Brandon, thank you. It's always great to be here. Adam, good to see you. And yeah, I might have been drafted ahead of Steve Largent, but that's where the comparison ends right there.
I feel like you have bragging rights, though. Like, is there any like a hierarchy among rookies back then where you're like, hey, Rook, I know we're both rookies, but I was picked ahead of you.
Now, I'll tell you a great story. Largent, of course, was drafted by Houston, right, then the Oilers, and not by us. So we had been in training camp we had been in training camp for probably 4 weeks over in Cheney before we ever broke camp to come over to the west side of the mountains and to start practice during our preseason games. In those days, there were 6 preseason games, not 4. And I remember my offensive coordinator, a guy named Jerry Rome, was the quarterbacks coach, offensive coordinator, and wide receivers coach, all in one. There were like 7 coaches on the entire team in those days. Now there's like 25 or more. And so Jerry said, he came to practice one day and he said, we have a chance to get this kid that I coached at Tulsa. And he said, he's a good little receiver. And he said, you guys will like him. The next day he shows up. He's standing on the porch at our old practice facility, which was in Kirkland, where Carillon Point is now. That was our practice facility right on the water. And he was standing on sort of the back porch area just off the locker room. He was looking out over the field. And Sam McCullum, one of our receivers, and myself, a couple of other guys saw him. And we just sort of, said hi, and we kept on. After practice, we're out there throwing passes. And Zorn says, Rabes, run me a quick slant. Well, I ran a quick slant. I stumbled. The ball hit my hands, bounced off my helmet, and went straight up in the air. And Largent looked at the guy he was standing next to and said, I can make this team. And that is a true story. And Steve Largent came in, and while he didn't start that very first day, it wasn't long before he was starting and on his way to a Hall of Fame career. I'm just glad I had a chance for my 6 seasons to play with a guy like him, because not only was he a great football player, but a terrific guy and a terrific leader, and I learned a lot from him.
Well, and Steve had a famous nickname too. He was known as Yoda. I'm curious, what was your nickname?
Peach.
Peach.
I went to Georgia Tech, so right. Georgia, Peach. Sam McCullum was Magic because the way he could get in and out of his breaks. Dave Craig was Mudbone on account of nobody could think of anything to call him, so somebody just made up Mudbone and it stuck. And to this day, he hates it. If you walked up to him and said, Mudbone, how you doing? He
doesn't like that, huh?
No. And in fact, I went back to visit. We played the Washington, the team in Washington.
Yeah, the football team.
The football team in Washington, as it will be known from here on out, many years ago. And Largent was a member of Congress at that time. So I, from where we were staying, I caught the light rail, the subway, and went over to his congressional office building. Walked up, in those days it was, kind of open, able to just sort of walk in, walk past security, say hi. And I found his office, and I kind of looked in the door. The door was open from the hallway there. And there were a number of constituents, and he had some of his staff people in there. And Steve was kind of tucked around the corner a little bit. So I stuck my head in, and I kind of walked in halfway, and I saw him, and our eyes met, and I said, Yoda! And 3 of his handlers almost came apart. They almost came unglued. They said, you can't talk to the congressman that way. Listen, I knew this guy before he was anybody. And so we sat down and kind of closed the door and chatted for about 20 minutes. And it was great. And I was really proud of him. And I was glad that he lasted as long as he did in a place like D.C. because they chew you up and spit you out. But he's just a terrific guy and still a great friend. We talk, we text. He's one of a kind.
Well, you've lasted quite a while in the news game, and after 38 years at Cairo and Seattle, you've now retired. And I think it's an important qualifier for Seahawks fans to know you're not retiring from calling Seahawks games. But how's retirement been for you here these last few weeks?
It's been interesting. I broadcast, first of all, for almost 3 months from my living room because of COVID. So we brought in camera equipment and lights and laptop computers and Had to set it up in such a way that we could, there was no teleprompter, but I could at least follow my laptop and see where we were on the rundown and what script was next and and so all those things, we finally technically got it all figured out. And then I got to be home for 3 months broadcasting. And it was, and I hate it because it was because of COVID, but it was the best preparation for retirement because I found out I really enjoy being at home. 38 years of basically having 2 jobs on the weekends for 6 months and traveling every other weekend or thereabouts. And then for the other rest of the year, I'd say a 9 to 5, but mine was 2 to midnight was my shift, basically anchoring all the newscasts. So to be able to be at home and so far Sharon hasn't kicked me out. She's been quite, at least she says she's happy with having me here. And then if we have a football season, we can starting to get prepared for that. But I have become quickly grown accustomed to being retired, and I can do the things I want to do, and I don't have to live by the clock. And as you guys know, when you're in this business, that's everything. At 5 o'clock, at 5:30, at 6, at 7, and at 11, I know where I'm going to be 5 days a week. It's kind of nice to be out of that grind now.
So, Steve, with the COVID situation and everything going on right now and the potential of having a season coming up here, has there been discussions about how that's going to affect you in maybe the way you travel or how you call a game, or are you going to be there in person? Have there been any discussions about that?
Yeah. Well, you guys know because being involved, being around the Seahawks, being around the organization, you understand there is nothing that gets more scrutiny and look at every option. Nobody does that more than coaches and an organization like the Seahawks. So we have talked about everything from how do I travel to doing the games from right where I'm sitting now and having a bank of monitors and looking at the video being fed to us. We've talked about it doing the home away games from a studio and doing the home games from down at the stadium, but with social distancing. And might it be possible for me to broadcast with a surgical mask as opposed to a cloth mask? I mean, we have talked about every eventuality. I don't know which it's going to be yet. I don't think the organization knows yet. Chuck Arnold was on the president, CEO of the Seahawks, was on our Zoom meeting here an hour ago. And he said he has every hope that everybody will be there next Tuesday and they'll be able to start getting the guys ready. We're pretty, we know that there are going to be no preseason games. But even he said, we're still in talks with the Players Association. We're trying to nail down some of the ancillary issues. They feel like they've got the safety thing figured out. He said there's no safer building on the planet than the VMAC right now. But, we have to look at every possibility. So I'll be prepared to, yell touchdown Seahawks or holy catfish sitting right here, or if I'm lucky to be able to do it either from the studios of our flagship station and then the home games. I really hope we're able to at least be able to go to CenturyLink and in some form or fashion be able to call the games there.
So how does having no preseason games then impact you specifically? Because you won't have an opportunity, I suppose, to whatever format you ultimately decide. Are you going to be right in it week one, or are you going to maybe have a chance to do it with past film? And does that kind of go into how you prepare for a normal season anyway?
Yeah, preseason for me was always really important because even though everybody talks about, well, they don't count and the last game is all rookies, but there is something good about that because you get another chance, just as the coaches have an extra chance to look at players in game situations. I have another chance to kind of look at them, to start to get my wheels turning and remembering, okay, a little bit more about this young kid. Where did he come from? Boy, does he look good out here in this situation. Maybe this veteran is not so solid after all when you got a guy pushing him like that. I mean, had we not had 4 preseason games and he not had the opportunity to show everything he could do, would Doug Baldwin have stuck with the team? I mean, he's a great example of a kid who literally, John Schneider knew who he was, Pete Carroll knew who he was, and the coaches did. None of us did, really. I follow the Husky football, but I don't follow Stanford all that closely. So I didn't know really how good he was. And he got better as his career went on because of all those opportunities, whether it was in preseason or regular season. He played special teams as a rookie. So here's a kid who really had to grow into the role and then became one of the great receivers in Seahawks history. So it's going to hurt the young players. I don't have any question about that. We'll be able to see him in practice. I'll be able to talk to coaches. I don't know that they'll give me cut-ups, the video that they cut up and look at in practice every day. I don't think I'm going to be, they'll let me look at those. But at least I'll be able in some way, shape, or form to see them some at practice and to chat with coaches. And then we'll just find out, if it's going to be tougher for those guys, though, than it will be the draft choices, no question.
Well, Steve, one of the reasons why we really wanted to have you on as part of episode 300 of this show was to thank you for really, and probably unknowingly, I'm guessing, for being a part of this show in such a big way. I found a clip. I went back in our archives to episode 105, and it was an episode that we did after Marshawn Lynch announced his retirement, and we did a tribute show for him. And one of the clips in this was maybe what you would call an iconic clip now, because it's a reason why you're both a big part of this show with your holy catfish call. And in this clip, it'll actually explain why it became part of our show. Holy catfish. That's become a big part of this show, right?
Oh yeah.
We use catfish to censor ourselves in the same way we think Steve Raible was doing when he called this play from Marshawn. But I think some people may not remember the actual play that Holy Catfish was from. We remember the game, I think. We remember Richard Sherman running into the end zone with one shoe. But
I was going to say, it's Texans game, right?
It's the Texans game. And the other memorable moment was this run up the sideline early in the game.
Back at the 2.5-yard line, Wilson under center. He's going to hand it off to Lynch. He looks for some running room. He breaks free across the 10, 15, cuts outside, 20, chase from behind, knocked, still on his feet, 30, 35, still going 40, still going 45. Holy catfish, what a run out to the 45-yard line. J.J. Wright, the defensive end, finally chased him down. That was all Marshawn Lynch for 42 tough yards.
The other thing I love about that clip, Steve, is that you were so amazed by the run. J.J. Watt's name became J.J. Wright, and
right,
it goes down in history with the clip.
Sometimes that happens. You're so involved in the emotion of the moment, and I'll say a name, and I mean sometimes I'll remember it'll be a close name, and I'll grab a name from 25 years ago, and even my producer, who's been around for 20 years with the Seahawks, he'll get in my ear and say, "Who?" And I'll know I screwed it up. And I said, "Oh, what was that? Oh, that's right. Yeah." Okay. So a little minor thing, but yeah. So that was the first time. I didn't even remember that was the first time.
Because I even went back to our 9th episode, and we started in the 2013 season, and we remarked about the fact that it was talked about on Sports Talk Radio that day about that Holy Catfish call. So I think that's the very first call that it came through.
Well, way to go. And thank you for filling me in. And you're right. It is a way of censoring oneself. I don't know if I can say holy on this particular broadcast.
You could say it, and then we could catfish it out with your own catfish.
I love it. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I probably would have said holy crap, but instead I said holy catfish. And I went to school at Georgia Tech, even though I'm not a Southern kid necessarily. I was born in Louisville, Kentucky. But I went to school at Georgia Tech, and we had, kids who came from the country, way down South Georgia and Alabama and Northern Florida, which is just like Southern Georgia. And, they had to pump in sunlight in some of those places. It was so far out in the woods. And these guys had sayings for everything. And one was funnier than the next. And I guess I probably heard it along the way somewhere, and it just sort of sank into the recesses. And that day just seemed like a good day to bring it up. And I have since said that, you can only have one of those a game now. And it really has to be a big play. It can't just be a touchdown. It can't be a a really good catch, or it's got to be something really spectacular, or a moment in the game that is just so overwhelmingly positive for the Seahawks that you can go with that. I don't even remember now, but obviously the NFC Championship game against the Niners here when Richard tipped that ball and it was intercepted by Malcolm Smith. And you can hear Warren Moon, my then broadcast partner, screech in the background. And as he always talks about, he said there was a screech heard around the world. But I couldn't see exactly what happened because it happened in the front corner of the near end zone. And the glass of our booth comes to a corner there. And I had to look through a couple of metal strips. And so I couldn't see initially whether it was an interception or not. And then I got the interception and went with it. But I don't remember if I said Holy Catfish that day. That would have been a good one for a Holy Catfish. But
I do think, because we've used a couple of them to censor ourselves through the show, I do believe that it was the interception, and then the other one was Jermaine Kearse's catch in Super Bowl 49.
Right. Yeah. There were a couple. The kick return by Percy could have been one of those as well. There are some. There are a few. I was trying to remember since I just talked to Tyler an hour ago, Tyler Lockett, whether that catch, remember Russell kind of scrambling out of the pocket, rolling left early in the season. Was it against the Rams?
Against the Rams.
And it looked like he was throwing the ball away. And Tyler kept those toenails in bounds, and Russell put it in the only spot that only a semi-human, who is almost angel-like, could make that catch, and that was Tyler Lockett. If that wasn't a Holy Catfish moment, it should have been.
All right, in all your honest opinion, Steve.
Yes.
Was he really trying to put the ball there, or was he throwing it away?
No, knowing Russ, he was trying to put the ball right on the spot.
I thought maybe it was a lucky throwaway.
No, but the good thing about it was he knew that if Tyler couldn't get to it, nobody else would. So he would give his guy that opportunity. He is phenomenal that way, to be able to make those kinds of throws. We talked, Warren used to obviously school me on quarterback play, and well, he should, because he's forgotten more than I'll ever know. But he always used to talk about throwing guys open. And Russell had that ability from very early on to put that ball on the spot where only his guy could get to it. That's why he throws only 6-7 interceptions in a season. Some guys will throw that in a game or two, but because he puts it so, in such the right spot, everybody thinks, well, it's because we run the ball so much and he doesn't have a chance to throw. But he really is surgical in his ability to put that ball on the money.
All right, out of the quarterbacks you played with, Steve, who would have the closest ability to match Russell Wilson in that sense of that precision passing? Yeah,
that I played with.
Yeah, sure. Or you can say
that I saw as well playing. Because I only played with a couple of three quarterbacks. I mean, Z-Man was my quarterback, but remember, everybody referred to him as a bigger Francis Tarkenton back in the day. He was a left-handed guy. He could roll out, throw on the run. In fact, you guys know football, so our offense, Jerry Rome built that offensive system around what Jim did best. And what Jim did best was throw on the move. And so we built our offense around a play known as the sprint draw. And it was Jimmy pulling out from under center. Remember, back in those days, nobody ran the shotgun, really. Jim back out from center, turn and deliver the ball to then Sherman Smith or David Sims or one of our running backs in those days, deep in the backfield. And then that running back comes toward the line of scrimmage and then can move down the line of scrimmage until he finds that gap and then hit it and go. It's called a lot of things today, but in those days, it was a sprint draw. And all or much of our passing attack was based off of that because Jim could roll out and throw so well on the run. Going either way. As a lefty, he was better going to his left, but he was equally adept at going to his right. And he made so many plays. And then he would also pull it down and run and pick up 15, 20, 25 yards. So, we were used to that. That was what our offense was built around. Mike, Holmgren, when he came in, it was Matthew. Matthew was a drop back guy. Matthew could protect himself and he could move around and he could run. And they had Seneca Wallace, who could be that guy if they needed him to be. but Russell is in a game of his own. There may be guys who can scramble better. Michael Vick was an unbelievable athlete. Colin Kaepernick, I saw him take the Seahawks apart in 3 quarters against the Hawks in that NFC Championship game.
Right.
And then late in the game, he depended on throwing the ball, and he threw the ball well until that last pass. But he was spectacular. And Lamar, what's his name now from Baltimore?
Yeah,
Jackson. Oh my God, he's something like we've never seen. Quite that physical stature, as big as he is, as big a cannon of an arm as he has. Mahomes is a little more like Russ. Mahomes isn't put together like Russ is. Can't take the beating that Russell can, but he's so quick and he throws so well on the move. There are a lot of those great athletes. Hey, remember, Steve Young was a terrific running quarterback when he had to be, but he taught himself and learned under Holmgren and others how to be a great drop back passer. So, there are those guys in the league, but Z-Man was pretty darn good in his day.
Well, Steve, we really want to thank you for coming on and talking Hawks and talking about the origin of Holy Catfish and being a part of our episode 300 celebration. So again, thanks for making this happen.
Holy Catfish, guys. It was great being with you.